Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrick, coming to you live on Thursday, 27th. RIFC derailed Locomotive and wins their second game in a row in their first at home. And in the Tuesday of the night, winning the run of the streak, continuing the celebration of tonight's match, with co-host Jason Carey. Jason, how is it going, sir?
Pretty good. I mean, there's a weird bit of confliction, right? We had a really good performance last night from RFC. But we kind of just suffered through USA game. Like, in some ways, maybe our mid levels shouldn't be correlated to soccer teams that we have no control over. But we're not here to get philosophical. That's not what this is about.
No. Today is a joyous occasion. We've already got people in the chat. Nate, I think Nate's first in every single post we've ever done. So Nate, RIFC, we got both blings up on the monitor. We got the raising anchor. We got the anchors up over there. We've got Carlos, my friend. It's good to see you. I think you've been missed the last few, so maybe we need to talk about what you're allowed to be at, because that's going to be one of the things on the night. We need to do a head count on who was at that game and who was not at that game. And bans need to be put in place. Tickets need to be canceled until the streak is over. Tim, you know this is a good luck time. I'm superstitious. These stay on until they're no longer needed. So at this point, unless I can wear these for work, these are attached to my feet. And of course, we got Matt Jean in here. It's not, instead of up the tide, it's now up the points. You know what? I'll take it. Whatever we need at this point,
Whatever works.
Keep the momentum alive. And speaking of things that we need to keep alive, we finally got to do the new victory tradition. It's been unlocked, and not only was it unlocked in such a great way, but there's a story. It's already been shared on the Instagram. It's like our highest liked post since the beginning of the season.
Nice.
But by all means, you get to tell the story, because you lived it right there with me.
So we went to the old Oneyville, get 3 all the way in Coffee Mill, and we ran some fans, but also
Not just any fans.
Not just any.
Maybe perhaps the fan, the superest. If Nate is like Mr. RIFC, we may have found the original fan.
What did he go by? Kuba. Right. Yeah. So he is one of the guys who work for, was it
Nail Communications,
who created the logo with Dumas, right?
Miles Dumas. Yeah. So like when you think about it, if you guys have been loyal rap fans for a year plus that we've been doing this now, in one of the earliest episodes when we broke down the crest, the logo, and everything that it means by it, we had actually ran into, by chance, it's a small state, small place. We ran into the crest designer, and he gave us this entire backstory of like how they came about it, what they were all about. But in the time, he had told us that one of the helpers in creating the design loved it so much that regardless of it getting picked up or not, he tattooed it on his body. And then they used that tattoo as part of the pitch to sell to Brett Johnson and the other board of directors on why this was, the club's crest. And, the story goes, Brett Johnson later confirmed it. Like, when they saw that, they were already leaning to it, but they fell in love. They saw the commitment. So that picture is like the origin statement of the club. That's like patient zero of the fandom right there. And we just randomly captured him getting 3 all the way at Oneyville. Like, you can't ask for better stories than that.
Ran out people in the wild like that. Everyone let's go and build afterwards, right?
And listen, that's the tradition I want to continue to build. We joked about it like out of desperateness, like just to try to like inspire the team to win in our own weird indirect way. And like now, like we win. I don't know if that'll be a Tidewater carryover, but I can at least say for now, since we have to drive that way home.
Yeah.
If we're winning, we're picking up victory hot wieners at Oneyville every single time. Doesn't matter, because like we're open late. So even if it was like a game that gets till 11 o'clock at night, we're still going there. So I'm all about it. It was like the capstone on a perfect night, perfect weather. We dodged the weather, right? Like everyone, I don't know if everyone's safe from the 90-mile-per-hour winds that went from like nothing outside to all of a sudden windows were getting broken. So I hope everyone got safe from that. Yeah, it was insane. Oh, so apparently Cuba got around. They're saying he was at the tailgate, he was partying. Nice. So fantastic time.
think I did see him at the time. I just didn't know who he was. So
I mean, to be fair, you also did the fan experience again, so,
yeah,
you
racking up those defiance points.
Tim,
No way you're gonna catch me now that you
Tim
raise
in
it
the
again.
chat, I need to know what is Jason's point allocation to mine? Just percentages. I need to know how far ahead
Hopefully,
he is.
hopefully I can turn those in for little like plastic guys on the thing. Is that how it works? Turn defiance points in?
I have no clue. I know that I'm super behind in the card collector app that Craig does. I'm 7 days behind, and I got so preoccupied last night in setting the lineups for the production, I forgot to set my game day lineup. I had it all written down. I just didn't get to it. So I'm not racking up a lot of personal W's in
I
that
started the
space.
month really good, and then
Tim says I'm in triple digits. He didn't specify who, so I'm gonna assume I'm gonna take triple digits and call dibs on that. We got Diego in the chat. Diego's saying that it was so ugly that at least it happened before the game. Yeah, that weather was pretty rough. So good to see everyone here. Lots of great news on the day. But you know us. We got to start things not on a high note. We got to start them on a
a little
little bit
bit
of
of
a
a
sad note.
sour note,
Little
maybe.
little goodbye, sweet prince.
Yeah.
So listen, we knew about this last night. It was something that was going to get announced today. We were embargoed to talk about it until we could confirm the Charleston deal had been accepted on their side. The Charleston podcast guys had already reached out to trying to confirm there was out that there was a player potentially inbound. It kind of made sense early on if you had caught the Howlers podcast tweet because we hadn't seen Prince in any of the training videos or pictures, and he hadn't dressed in the week. So it was like, okay, maybe something's going on here. And then they announced that Prince is no longer with us. You wanna get to this press read that the club announced earlier today?
Yeah, so Rhode Island FC announced today it has reached an agreement with USL Championship side Charleston Battery for Prince Sadie, sending the midfielder straight to the Eastern Conference Club. Pending league and federation approval, RFC will receive an undisclosed fee for the transfer. Uh, we thank Prince Sadie for his contributions to Rhode Island FC and wish him the best at his new club. RFC head coach and general manager Connor Smith. Sadie made 11 appearances across all competitions at RFC in 2024, recording 450 minutes and 4 starts.
So listen, you miss a sitter right in front of the net, and you're gone. Coach has no patience for it.
Wow, he's that cutthroat.
He has no tolerance, and you're out. I mean, clearly that's what this was, right?
No, I mean, we wish him well. I think
Not
that
too well.
yeah, not too
It's an
well.
Eastern Conference transfer, so like
Yeah.
kinda well.
So hopefully he'll find his footing after we play them for the second time, right? There we go. Or maybe he just misses that match. I feel like he kind of never really fit in with the team. He seemed to be more of an out and out winger, and just don't the 3-5-2 system just doesn't. Where you got wing backs,
Right.
not wingers.
Right.
So I just think that it never really gelled early on in the season. When we were previewing like the season with Connor McGlynn, we thought, okay, they've had that friendship from Hartford. Maybe we'll unlock some sort of connection there. I don't think they even saw too many minutes on the pitch together, right?
Right. Well, I mean, between Connor's injuries, his red cards, yeah, that makes it difficult. Listen, I think you're spot on here about Sadie's contribution. He showed uh, flashes of brilliance, but he was competing in an already congested space. A couple of people asked online, and real fast, Diego writes in, "It is what it is. He deserves playing time in Charleston. We'll give that to him. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not sure. Charleston has they don't have scoring problems because Lukanich is like at like 70 goals already for the year, but
That
it's
being said,
limited.
he's dried up a little bit. We haven't heard about it in a while, so I don't know what's going on there.
Right. Well, at least they're not beating up on the likes of Miami every week. So I will say this, like back to Sadie. One, the winger position really is convoluted because with the wing backs, like everyone thought when this team was getting constructed that it was coming under the guise of a 4-3-3. And if it was a 4-3-3, that's where we would have seen those instances where you're gonna need to rotate that winger because they're probably going to be running to the ground game after game. So it makes sense early on for coach to adopt that depth in the roster, and he's comfortable playing on either wing. So we all probably thought this would be more likely like Quizera and then a rotation in to someone like Sadie, but then both wings would get rotated. What we're seeing now is that when the wing backs are getting gassed, they're getting replaced for for more standard midfielders and allowing, because again, we play the 3-5-2, or they're swapping for a fullback, a traditional fullback.
Colin Smith.
Yep, and then they're playing maybe a little bit more aggressively, or they're playing more traditionally in a defensive shape. So, like, in terms of winger, since we don't really have a wing formation, and it looks like coach is gonna, right now it makes sense, but he's gonna ride or die by this 3-5-2 for the year. And I think that's the doing of Chico being signed so late, that there just really wasn't going to be a lot of playing time. And of the winger rotation, it's hard to argue that Sadie was better than Mark Doyle or that he was better than Noah Poussin. And so from that standpoint, it makes sense for the club to want to shop him, or for him himself to want to get to a club where he can get some playing time. And that just kind of is what it feels like on the day. Listen, at the end of the day, this is good business for both Charleston and for Rhode Island FC. There is an undisclosed fee. A lot of people today were talking about the like what was the fee, and like I'm gonna pump everyone's brakes here and set some expectations on what the fee is in USL. Don't go off the transfer market. Transfer market is a mechanism to determine a player's evaluation, but that's at the macro setting of a Division One club, somewhere they have the coin to overspend for the talent that they're looking for. In the USL, when almost every player is year to year, that evaluation intraleague is much lower. And so, like, I think Sadie's rated at like $250,000. He is not commanding that price. One, because I don't think Charleston was necessarily trying to poach him. It was probably like, if anyone's interested, this player is potentially available. And so it's just a matter of like, okay, something needs to be exchanged so that the transaction can be completed. Because at the end of the day, Rhode Island is giving up a piece in their arsenal. They need to be compensated as such. But this wasn't like a $200,000. I don't know. The club will never tell me. The two things I never can get from them is the financials and like the contract lengths. The CBA is very closely guarded. We're not a public open face system like other soccer leagues in America are. So it's kind of a guessing game at times. But like, knowing the money, knowing the average contract salary in this league, even for a veteran like Prince Sadie, I don't think this was north of 50,000, maybe 100. But I just don't see it in mid-year like this.
Yeah, I think a lot of those transfer market valuations are a theoretical value. If some European team were to come in, we could argue that maybe we could sell him for up to 200K, but probably would you get that much? And part of that, I don't know for sure. Is that also their contract maybe baked in there too?
So in a year to year, unless the player's negotiating an extension, so like they want like a full 12 months with you, which means like another summer rotation, which no club's going to do that. Sadie, in this particular case, could have negotiated an extension in 2025. I doubt it, because Charleston's probably taking a chance and they don't necessarily know what they need to retool. There could be a club option to do that, but I just don't see that happening. So Charleston's absorbing whatever the contract price that Rhode Island was paying, and they're giving a little bit more on top. That's why, again, clubs aren't making a ton of money, guys. Like, when we still have teams that can fold any given year, like, let's not talk about like lucrative and like high crazy inter-transfer costs. Like, let's sell players to Benfica like Blue City did last year with Josh Widener. Let's not pretend that we're making millions or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on player acquisitions. It's not like that. I still think JJ Williams wasn't really more than probably $100,000 to steal away from Tampa, and he was a prolific goal scorer for them last year.
Yeah, so Diego here is asking about the possibility of signing another back. We've heard that there's potentially
let's talk about it.
A defender on the way, so that could be a wing back. But we also remember we have Alves, right? So with this system in place, we assume now Messi's kind of solidified himself in the back line, right?
Well, he got injured, which
He
we'll
got
talk
injured,
about in a
so
minute.
yeah, health, depending upon that, it looks like for the rest of the season, that's probably where he's going to get his minutes. We have Grant Stoneman coming back. We have Nathan Messer, who can also potentially play there on the left. There's Colin Smith. I don't know. I mean, I could see it, but I feel like with the injury issues we've had at center back, that actually might be a more pressing like position, especially because if we're going to continue with the 3-5-2, you have 3 center backs, so you kind of want that cost almost like 2 for every position.
Right. Well, I mean, but look at the night, right? So let's go into like the Messi example here. We had 3 center backs. Alves is out. Messi gets hurt in the 60-plus minute, and Connor McGlynn has to come in. We talked to
And
coach
then we saw
afterwards.
Clay slide in and become that right center back.
So we talked to Connor. We talked to coach, and he had said that it's a hamstring issue. At the time it was being assessed, they had no ability to determine the severity of it. It was hamstring tightness, and that's exactly what happened, right? We had no center back depth. That Clay Holstead, as wonderful as he is, then had to drop down to cover in that right center back role. Grant Stoneman is day to day. Coach said that he anticipates him being available for selection any game now. But even then, that's one extra player. For as much as we have depth in a lot of other places in the field, especially like in midfield, we're surprisingly shallow in through and through center back depth.
Yeah.
I believe that there's going to be a center back allocation if a deal is to be made. I've heard that like whatever is this potential. I don't know that if Sadie's deal was to make room. Originally, we weren't sure if head cap was like an issue in terms of roster size. But Phil Baki last week told us that doesn't matter. Go for it. So really, then if it does come down to it could come down to like this is more money for the war chest to be able to make that acquisition get across the finish line. There could be other circumstances. Everything I said about Jack P last week is now up in the air with Thomas Chancala's injury with his ACL. He's now out for the season. Injury list. So basically, Jack P is not coming here unless they find a suitable replacement. Who knows if the Revs are going to be willing to pull the trigger and spend that kind of money mid-season when they're really not. I know they're on a trajectory with 4 wins in a row now, but they probably I just don't see them actually, pulling the trigger and letting Jack P come back down now as a safety net. So there's questions to be asked, and maybe this move is strategic to bring another center back. The coach, like he's always said, the roster is never done being constructed. Never put that on a bumper sticker, guys, because that is the coach Cono way. Let's get through a couple of these comments real fast. Diego's just hoarding up all of the comments here. I love it. But first, we got to start with him. I got bonus points this time around for getting my son to the game before he could do that. And their child has been around all season. Tim, I appreciate that about you. But in classic fashion, because I was doing the gig part of it, it's not like I got to spend time with him, so it didn't even count. I mean, he was happy. He had a blast. He got his first jersey. He was with the Defiance all night. He had a really good time. But I appreciate that, Tim. And I will take the bonus points so that I can get ahead of the standings. Back to Diego again. We got this comment here from him that this would be nice. UCB would really help that lacking depth in the position. He would love it. So if Diego's on board, I'm on board. Then let's make that happen. Let's get into the news, and then we can start unpacking this game. This should be a relatively short podcast because we only have to talk about a win, and we don't have anything to really complain about. So, I expect unless the listeners want to drive this longer, this is going to probably be, I say this every time, this may be the shortest podcast on record. We'll see. But let's get into it real fast. 4th of July Bristol Parade is coming next Thursday, right before the Indy 11 game. There is a select group of people that will be marching in the parade to represent RIFC. I will be one of them. My son will be one of them. Will be waving some flag. I don't know if it's the American flag, the state flag, a Rhode Island FC flag, a Defiance flag. I'll be waving a flag.
I've heard is RI #1 mascot going to be there?
Chip will be there.
Nice.
Yeah, he'll be up in the Jeep though, doing the Miss America wave. Could you imagine having to walk? I think it's like 6 miles in that, and it gets warm, right? Like he's going to be in that Jeep just doing the wave. I'm really excited. I don't know who is actually participating in the walk. I have some assumptions, but I know that some Defiance members are going to be there. Really excited to see that. Tim's already writing the meanest line possible. It's going to be a short podcast, I promise. But really excited to do that. The scarf, I asked the club yesterday if we could get that scarf out to those people walking so we can showcase it, tie it into the American team and the point of the patriotism behind the walk. Hopefully we can get those scarves around our necks while we're walking, and maybe just get ahead of time so we don't have to wait in line to buy them at the march line. And I can report exclusively the club heard the cries from the fans about the exclusivity of that scarf. That scarf will be available to season ticket members for a separate purchase price at the stadium. So you can buy that scarf. They will make sure that there are supplies available. They recognize, they hear you. The season ticket members are the most important people to them because we know that we're all dedicated. We got to keep them happy. So you will be able to get that scarf on game day. Um, you may have to order one. I don't know, but they promised to make a commitment that that scarf will be made available beyond the exclusive package. But I still say all that because that exclusive package is still a better deal because you get a ticket out of it for like I think it's like $5, $3 more,
Yeah,
and you can
package
bring a
deals
friend.
are great.
Bring a DD so that you can drink and spend time with it. So
There you
that's how it works. Nate's keeping us going here. He loves the show. We're gonna keep going. We're never gonna stop, Nate. Just for you. Just
Can't
for
stop,
you.
won't stop.
So, anyways, that's the 4th of July. Can't wait to see everyone. And then the 5th of July, we've got the game. But we're gonna talk about that game next week to preface it. We'll do a Wednesday recording and then we'll drop it as a live recording and release it. No, actually, no, we're gonna talk Wednesday because the 4th of July is Thursday, and I'll be busy parading. So we're gonna do a Wednesday release next week. We may do live, we may not, depending on Jason's flight schedule and coordination. But I do want to tell everyone that if we drop a video and it's like pretend live, I always sit in the video on all of the different avenues that it sits in, and I respond to any questions. So feel free to participate if you realize really quickly that it's not a live one. I won't talk about it like I am right now, but I'm always happy to follow along in the chat. So feel free. I mean, it's so short. Tim is giving us an update that the email came out today. Oh, so pre-order. So there you go. You can pre-order. So season ticket members, check your emails. Look at that. You know I don't check my 37,000 unread. So that's going well for me. You want to get into this game?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. So RIFC El Paso 352. I was right. You owe me an apology. You owe the world an apology to me for I told you. I told you Lee was going to start. And what did you say to me? You said I was alone.
I didn't say Look, I'm not surprised it happened. In the past, coach has done this, right? He's rewarded for his performance, kept him in. So I thought it was a possibility. It's just the theoretical exercise. Was my team, you know, playing okay? But hey, you know what? We played on the night. You did great, right? I mean, we'll get into it as we talk about the game. Maybe not a lot to do there.
Hey, he had one, and he fully extended.
There
It
was
was just it was a great save.
Yeah,
Great save.
he did.
But listen, okay. So yes, I was right. You still haven't apologized. I will remember that. But what's important here, and I think that this is kind of overlooked if you don't kind of go into the numbers of it, this was the first time in club history we didn't top champ. We rolled out the exact same roster. So not only did Lee get to stay in, but Brito stayed in for the McGlynn who could have returned. We didn't pull Chico for the Fuson element. Coach had faith. He rewarded these guys and all of their hard work. It paid dividends on the night. Not only did you see Chico finally return to the scoreboard, which we'll talk about in a minute, you saw the lightning hot Jojea Quizera able to get his second, I'm going to say third goal in a game straight because Rwanda's game was first. He didn't score in the second one, did he? He did not. But
I
still,
forget.
3 goals in 4 competitions that he's played, like, that's amazing. And then Noah Poussin and JJ Williams and Isaac King all get an assist and or a goal on the night. Like, it's the same players from last week with a sprinkling of Chico added in, and we saw the most deserving win, electric win in so far Rhode Island FC's very short history. You predicted a very long time ago maybe our first win was going to come against El Paso, and then we quietly kind of started to get worried as Wilmer Cabrera took the helm there. We weren't sure going. Was it going to be a trap game? We didn't know. What were your thoughts on the night?
It was really great to see some consistency there. Kind of completely about like changing everything. It seems like we've started to figure out what's working, and we're just kind of leaning into that. Um, let's get through some of these like stats here, and then we can kind of go over some of the games. So, Rhode Island have now scored in the last 3 USL championship games, scoring 10 goals. Remember a few weeks ago when
We only have like 9 goals.
couldn't buy a goal?
We only had 9 goals up until like the 10th game.
10 goals in the last 3 games. And we've scored in all 3 of the last games, which is a joint longest streak of the season.
You know what my favorite facts are when you start looking at these early stats in the first year of a club, like beginning? You start getting all these like longest streaks. Like right now, we're in our longest winning streak. We're in our longest like actual consecutive win streak at 2. Like, this is a really great time to be alive. We know that this podcast title was already written in the stars as the first home win, but like there are so many other like fun statistical stats that you could put out there right now about like these like building streaks, these building continuations.
Speaking of which, Rhode Island are undefeated in the last 3 games in the U.S. Championships with their joint longest unbeaten streak from the 7th of April to the 21st of April.
See? I love it. I love it. So
And
let's
then
go ahead.
we've got J.J. Williams now has contributed in the last 3 games, so we were kind of worried about, when is he going to produce? He's now got a goal and 2 assists. Albert Deep's now scored his 4th goal. We talked about like, hey, when is he going to start getting it going? Well, he just did, and that was first since the 30th.
So listen, Chico. I mean, I would say Georgia, and he did rightfully. Georgia had the best game on the
Oh
night,
yeah,
but
he's
like
been phenomenal.
this
The last 2
meant
games.
a lot to Chico. You could see it after he scored the goal. They did like the whole like autograph meme and picture and all that. Like this was important because there has been a tremendous amount of expectations placed on Chico this year to perform and deliver, and he started on the right pace, the right trajectory. And then that, let's get honest, that Open Cup game, like just broke him.
Yeah,
Something got flipped off, and you saw them first the Open Cup penalty miss, and then the very next game against Phoenix with the penalty miss there.
yeah,
That was problematic for him.
it's just taken a little while, I think, to recover from that, and it's good to see, like you mentioned, with the celebrations afterwards. Like it really feels like the team is like really excited, and there's some camaraderie there, right? Where they're all just playing around, having a good time, pointing to each other, each other's assists. It's great to see.
And I think the key word of the night, all the players did their little videos to the club, to the fans, they were all buzzing. So like everyone's buzzing right now, and this is only going to strengthen a locker room that has probably been rattled a bit. Like he asked about the conditions of the locker room and the mentality state of these players back after the Detroit game, where it looked
Yeah,
a little bleak, and they were honest. The players that were interviewed, like, it's not great, but it's we have solidarity. We believe in each other. It's not like we're broken. We just are all upset with the on field performance. Well, now it's all coming through. So if they've already ridden through those dark times, those draw king moments, and now they've converted this into back-to-back wins, I want to see what is the limit on this club next then, because if Chico can get out of this funk and we have a continuous and consistent goal contributor in JJ Williams, whether he's scoring or making the assists, and now we have that poacher, that lethal kind of striker mentality back, that edge in Chico.
our wing play has been very solid. He's consistent in the back. The midfield is doing their thing. Olstad and Ybarra are just cleaning everything up, doing the thankless job. Like it's looking good.
Yeah, and like here's the interesting part to all of it, and we'll talk a little bit about the Jackson Lee impact on this, but I really think that coach has moved away from trying to implement the tactic that he wants and just understanding the strengths of the players that he has on the pitch. Even last night, which I thought was really interesting, the Providence Journal journalist asked the question about like, what didn't go well in the night. What would you have liked to see better? And coach, he mentioned that sometimes they weren't playing the common collective expectations that he had on the game, but he mentioned possession a few times. And again, this was a game where you would not see it in the eyeball test because it felt like we were stepping all over El Paso, but we once again only had 37% possession.
Yeah.
This team seems to be the type of team that thrives on not having the ball and worries more about the maintaining of its composure and its shape. And then the order one of the night, right now at least, is Jackson Lee getting a long ball to their target forward, JJ Williams, and if JJ can redirect the ball back to the feet of a midfielder, or if he can redirect the ball to where it's compromising the opposing team to where they can't set up and play their game, we can then catch them high in that transition and then start some sort of attack. But if we lose it right away, we reset. We don't. We've kind of stopped the high press to a certain extent. We've stopped the possession and playing out the back unless it's needed for one reason or another, and it seems to be working. I I love that coach has either recognized that or is willing to consider other options. This team looks considerably more comfortable in this new setup.
Yeah. The only I guess it is something they will have to think about. You want to learn how to be able to possess the ball to a certain extent, because there are those teams who are just gonna maybe even do the same thing as you and sit back and like, "No, you." And then you're both just sitting like a standstill sitting there like, "No one wants the ball." So how do you break down those type of teams? So right now, I don't think we have that type of player. So I think it's what we're doing right now is great, but I think maybe like you said in the back of the line, there is that like we need to figure out a plan B per se for those rare instances where they're just going to let us have the ball. Like how do we break a team
Right. It would seem like the plan B now is it's not a plan B, it's a plan B,
down?
because I really do think, and I think Lee shut up a lot of the argument last night that he has every right to be on that pitch as much as our Capitan, and really showed a complete game, getting the club's first clean sheet on the season. I don't mean to make it this like goalie wars thing or this controversy. And like you said, and you heard in the coach's response to the interview, he's going to continue to reward good performances. But like the other part of that story is that Lee just, I never get panicked when I see Lee in net. I see sometimes mistakes made due to maybe like him quickly elevating his level to the next professional game that he's in. But I never get that like, oh no, when I like I do with Coke. And others have expressed it. I want to ask you just to kind of jump into this. If Lee continues on this streak of wins and successful performances, what happens next? Because one, if we just pull the keeper the next time he loses, it doesn't show a lot of faith in the coach on the strategy. Because listen, you're not going to win every game. There's going to be a loss in the future. And like I'm reminded of the Bruins this year when they were swapping out the goalkeeper, goaltenders left and right all the time, and it kind of worked for them, but at the end it didn't. And I don't mean to bring up bad news on that one. Like, there's something to be said about swapping between goalkeeper and goalkeeper just strictly off of the results column. What do you think this says for the prospect of League? Because I kind of was talking to you last night after the game. I have a theory of what could really be a potential unlock, but I don't know if this is the right way. So starting there, and then also Tim is already saying he started the night okay, now it's team Lee. So uh, Tim knows.
I mean, I'm not going to argue against. You can't take him out at this point, right? But there is a conundrum at the same time where Koke was signed for our captain, our first signing. Maybe this all has to do with how you're saying that coach is looking at how to, with the pieces that he now has, rather than trying to implement his own system, how do these players fit into various systems? And currently, the system setup that he has right now, maybe he is the better keeper in that idea, where Koke gives you the passing, the kind of that possession style. But if the team's not going to play that, do they just need someone who is more out and out shot stopper? Because most all goalkeepers can boot it long. Right? Granted, you want them to have some level of accuracy, but most of them can do the basic hit it forward to a striker, halfway up the field. Not this, these accurate like 10, 20, 30-yard low passes that you get with a goalkeeper like, okay, you know, I thought that Kincaid was going to come back in, but I think at this point now we might see Lee. The only issue that we have is Lee wasn't he was only tested one time, right? So say Indy, beats us back. Does that get put on Lee? And then do we constantly switching back and forth? Because you can't do that. I
Right.
mean, you
That's
you
what I'm
mentioned
afraid that
you
he
mentioned the
might do.
Bruins, but there's also a more recent soccer kind of analogy with was it last year, this year? Arteta was changing Ramsdale and Raya
For Arsenal.
back and forth.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Like I think realistically he always wanted to have Raya be his keeper, but like he just wasn't performing good, so he had to keep putting Ramsdale back in. but I think you kinda have to just pick one and stick with him. So, as we're starting to find form now, I think coach has to kind of decide who it is that he wants to be his starting keeper. We had talked about this last night, and I think I kinda agree
Well,
with
let me say
so,
what it
yeah,
is
do
so then
you
yeah.
wanna go into that?
So I don't have a theory, but I do have a potential understanding. And guys, don't know what the audio is. We're still new to the streaming. I've boosted all the gains, so if it's coming in and out, I apologize. We can clean it up in post, but streaming wise, I only have 2 levers to pull here. So, um, but it's not a theory, but I do think that there's an opportunity for us to look at this from a business perspective that, it's not the end of the world if Koke doesn't see playing minutes this season for the rest of the season. I know that sounds like a terrible thing to say. What I mean by it is Koke's on a multi-year deal, right? Like we know that. We don't know if it's 2 or 3. 2 is multi, but that means that he's our keeper. He's in our keeper roster lineup for at least the next 2 years. Lee is not. To our knowledge, Lee's on this single year. Who has the ability to be sold directly to LAFC at the end of the season if MLS wants his rights, or he can be sold to any other club outside of the MLS as a result of that. There is something to be said about developing and like growing an amazing and incredible keeper and then selling him off at the highest possible price point. And at the end of the day, the way I look at this as, well, no keeper and Koke actually wrote something in his personal Instagram about, like, his feelings on the matter and, like, because he was really touched last night, the Defiant 1636, they brought out the banner of him to celebrate him. He even said, "It's not where I want to be, but it is a place that I am at," and that he still loves and appreciates every single person. Obviously, he's being very politically correct there. But Koke's still our guy. Koke's gonna be here next year, and he has a secured contract. Koke is a vet in the league, he's an older player. So to him, and I think to a lot of those players, what matters more is your permanence, your ability to get the next year contract. A lot of these players we may not see next year because we can't afford them because they can get priced higher or we don't want them anymore for a performance perspective. So, like, when you think about that, it's really to understand that like, Lee, this may be a better deal right now, and we still have Koke around. He can still come back at any point, and that's a great place to be. Whereas Lee, I think we all can agree will be gone at the end of the season. So now it's kinda like, hey, how much can you get for him at the end? Because if he plays 5 more games and he's this good, that raises his price tag considerably. Again, like, going back to the earlier conversation about Sadie and, like, those transfer fees probably aren't worth a lot. Him going to MLS or going to Europe or going home to Australia, like, suddenly that price tag gets inflated considerably, and right now, like, you can't deny that that might be a really interesting thing to pursue.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and then with the reality that a lot of these contracts are not that long, it kinda makes sense that you play the hot hand, right? Because there's no guarantee that you can't look at all these players and think, "Well, this is a prospect." Well, with most of their contracts being a year, it's kind of a now or never. There you have your few stars, say a handful of players who you're like, "No, this guy is a staple in our team, lock him down." But some of these other guys can kinda be flashes in the pan, and when they're hot, you just need to get them out there.
Yeah. So listen, at the end of the night, and Tim writes in, "Isn't Lee's father coming into RI soon?" It's interesting. I don't have as many conversations with the Lee clan. I talk to a lot of other players and their families, but, Jackson Lee's dad is an FQB Quahog Corner, loyalist, so if he listens to us, I've never had conversations with him, but I would have to say you'll have to ask, Kevin on what the travels are. I'd love to meet him. I'd love to see what kind of a guy raised, a young goalkeeper with a mustache like that, so I'd be really interested to see, but listen, like you said, the XG on the night for El Paso was one of the lowest I've seen in league history. It definitely helped lead to why we ended the night with a 3-0 clean sheet. .23 XG is never gonna get it done. Although last week with .75, we got 5 goals, so, like, that's not impossible. But you're right, Lee wasn't really tested on the night from his goalkeeping perspective. He did have that one really good
Yeah.
extended save from Moshe Bonico, but But, like, I look at him right now as he's finding JJ, he's getting the ball up the field consistently, and he's rock solid in the net. So I think he's my guy for the time being until I'm proved otherwise. But that's kind of capstone in this conversation. Like, I just don't trust the coach. That's a reward only in the moment. Like, he's really gonna have to stabilize his decision.
Yeah, that's kind of the one position where I think he's gonna have to take a stance.
Agree.
Speaking of XG, so like you mentioned last time, scored 5 goals in a what, 0.85?
6.75, I think.
0.75. It was low. So this time it's a little more balanced of an XG conversation we have 1.72 to their 0.23 because they only had 1 shot on target. Um, Part of the reason why that's more balanced, so we had 10 shots, 5 on target, but of those 10 shots, 9 of those were in the box. So that's how you generate XG,
Right.
right?
The closer you are, the higher the percentage.
So, like, Chico's, I think, was an 8. I mean, you can't get can't get much closer than that. Um,
Quizarro's on the cut in must have been super close.
well, so I
He ran to the top of the box and then fired
okay, yeah,
across.
yeah, I know that one. I was thinking of Noah's. Like, Noah's not so much. That was very technical.
Right.
But yeah, Cazares he was in a good position. But compared to last week, where you have Clay hitting one from 35, like that's not a high
Right.
chance.
You have the other Quizarro
That's
goal
just
being
that's just
basically out of
talent.
touch, sideways to the goalkeeper. You're right.
Yeah. So I'm not worried about XG. Some people were and last one. I was like, how is this sustainable? That was I don't think the result was a freak result, but some of those goals were just, you know, phenomenal goals that are just gonna happen from time to time. Because this team, despite not having lots of results, has put up decent XG numbers. They just have not started finishing until the last few weeks,
Right. Right.
where all of a sudden our goal tallies have just kind of catching up and course correcting there, right?
So speaking of finishing, let's talk about and I'm going to say it in air quotations, the super sub impact of Noah Fuson and Isaac Anking. 2 games in a row, they either get a goal, assist, or a combination of both. I asked Noah, like, "Hey, what does it feel like to know that you've had this kind of level of production so late in the game?" I referenced super sub, and you could tell he's like, "No, no, no, I wanna be a lock-on starter," and I get it, every player does.
Yeah.
But, then he cheekily kind of answered with like, "Hey, I don't know, that's just like when I'm scoring right now." What's the idea about, like, in your opinion, do you think this is something that we could start to see as a tangibility? I mean, again, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Are we gonna get bigger returns on the investment of the likes of Noah Fasson coming in with 20 minutes, 30 minutes to go?
Possibly, but there is the reality of rotation, right? Um, you're gonna probably see some of those guys swap out from time to time. A lot of
Yeah,
that
but
will
no, 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 that's not what I'm asking. Don't sit on the fence here. Give me a real answer. Is the impact of their ability to be more dangerous with those less because if Busan is
so
speed and clinical and technical, Isaac is a brute. That dude is so big, so strong, that, like, I feel like
he's like an athlete,
they change the game when they come on versus, like, a more defensive-minded squad or someone in the midfield who's trying to contain the game. They add a new avenue of threat that I don't think the last 2 games teams have been prepared for, especially coming from losing positions.
So when you talk about super sub, they kind of fall into one of 2 categories. Either they are getting up there in age and they accept that their bodies cannot go for that long, or they are a younger player who is not completely proven, maybe is slightly raw, has a lot of speed. So if you're saying that Noah is not, he's not a complete player, you don't have like the 6 man like you do in basketball, right? That's not really a thing per se in soccer. Everyone wants to be a starter except for, like I said, the old guy who's like,
I got 15 minutes in these legs, and then, yeah, I'm taking an ice bath for 10 hours while you go out to the club and
yeah, I'm
celebrate.
I'm gonna I'm gonna go ham for like 15 minutes and that's all I got, guys. And then the young kids are they're gonna come on and try to work really hard and impress. If he becomes a super sub, he's gonna want away. So I mean, we can give him that title, but he's not gonna want it. He's gonna want to push his way into I think King because he is a bit more raw and maybe not where did we even get him from?
He was in the Columbus Crew too, most recently. He was new.
King did too? I thought that was
No,
Persona.
they all did. They all did.
Okay.
King comes from the Revs Academy, MLS senior squad for the Revs, fell out and tried to work his way back to the next academy. They weren't at the same time
Okay.
as on the Columbus Crew too.
Because academy players, I can see more of that super sub role, right? Because they're maybe not established. Where I feel like Noah coming straight from Crew 2 maybe has that kind of a little more feel like he's starting to cement his career. He's going to want to find some.
Well, I mean, Nate thinks he's a super sub. Carlos thinks he's a great sub, and use the word super. But they all agree they're making an impact. And Tim writes in, this is a long one. I think Noah wants to start, but my eye test makes me think he sometimes conserves energy when he starts. But if he comes in that final, half or that final second, he gives his all out for 20 30 because he can. I will tell you, if you guys watch Noah, Noah's the kind of player that after a game, whether he ran 90 or ran 9, he's doing laps after the game. That man is like an Energizer bunny with a battery that never ends. So I don't disagree. And like, I guess my point is, I don't want to relegate anyone to a position that, especially if they don't want to be it. But you can't argue with these results. And like,
Yeah.
there is a tremendous and considerable impact right now. Busan and King coming in roughly at the same time. It's like they're becoming the Bash brothers of this team. Like they do really incredible and different things. Small sample size, but I also don't think we've seen these two players come in at the same time. Enking was out for a while with the injury. He signed late. We saw him as early as Bermuda, and then we didn't see him for an extended period of time. So, Enking is returning to his most fit level, and it makes sense that he's becoming a positive contributor now. Real fast, going back in history here, Matthew Jean writes, do you think a standout game from Lee or a lackluster attack? And do you think Coach Reserve reassesses the goalie combo after Indy for a better offensive team? Matt didn't listen to our entire. I think he just showed up.
That might have actually, but while we were talking about, we didn't
But
get there.
but I don't think it was El Paso's lack of attack. I think that Lee was doing everything right on the night, and if you can stop 8 shots in Louis, and you only get the one, and you do that was an impressive extension. I think we have to give full credit to Coke. There we go. I'm going to screw it up to Lee. But that being said about Indy, we kind of did touch on like, yes, Indy's going to be a more dangerous team, and we'll talk about that next week. But I don't think that it is fair that even if he has a poor result, it's truly him. He makes some really bad decisions. I don't know that it's fair to say that it's on him to own that mistake.
I think if this was a single result and we didn't have the Louisville there where he was getting, peppered, then I would say we would still want to kind of assess that, right? At this point, we've seen that Lee is a very capable and good shot stopper.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are your final thoughts on the game?
I'm a bit of a data guy. Eye test obviously is very important. I'd like to see a bigger sample size. But is this the lineup? Is this the formation? This is tactics? I think we've been a 3-stretch game.
Well,
Or do you think there's still some more?
It can't be the formation because there's going to be answers now that need to be solved for Messi, and it can't be Clay Holston dropping back.
Yeah,
And
I guess
we don't have a right back. We have Grant Snowman potentially returning, but I don't know if he's ready to do that level of work.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're not talking about injuries, 3-5-2, and hit along to the striker, catch teams in transition. I mean, like,
Yeah,
this now found the solution, right?
I don't think this is Kano ball, but I think this is now currently what Kano ball has to be. So, Kano may, and if we ever get Jack Key back now, whatever that looks like, as the players can try to continue to learn the structure, or maybe just save it for playoffs and like throw it in for a loop. I think they've figured it out. I don't know. That's I said playoffs. We're back in the but yeah, I think for now you don't mess this up until suddenly we get scored on, 5-2, and we have too many questions and not enough answers.
Coach also said too, right? The good team doesn't lose 2 in a row, so there are things that are going to happen. Maybe second time we play Charleston, Marcanich remembers how to score, and what's important is how do they respond? Because in the past we've seen varying levels of they put out and then the next game they falter.
Right. And so, like, speaking of falter, I'll be really curious because the next game is going to be a tough game. We'll talk about that in the preview next week. But if this team is able to continue this momentum, which I do think was the most important thing on the day, is that they won this game yesterday against El Paso. If they hadn't done that, the win almost didn't matter at the moment. Like, it was important that they also did that, but the fans needed to be able to respond. And like you said about the team doesn't lose 2 times in a row, we needed to see this team take some momentum, take some of the learnings, and apply them in the next game. And now let's see if they can do that again. Because if this club can win 3 in a row, one, that shows that it's not I don't even wanna say that it's a fluke anymore, but they can play that they're not just only playing at the level of their
Yeah.
opponent. That was a big concern we had with this, like, is this a trap game because El Paso is in last place? We need to start being able to build on the confidence and the expectation that, yes, they will go in and the opponents I'm supposed to beat, but I will also be able to beat the opponents that maybe people don't think that I'm ready to defeat. And so if they can beat Indy 11, then that'll be 3 games with 2 of them at home in front of fans, which that will continue to drive the inertia of the support of the club. But most important then, we get an interesting lineup the game after that, which is against the one and only Miami FC.
Oh, okay.
And we've been joking about, leave it to us again to probably get our butts whooped by a club like that because we're talking too early on that it's a joke. But like
Is that one? Do you know
that
if
could
that
be
one's home
4.
or away?
That is the away leg. They're
Okay.
going down. Our
Very
last game,
is
fan
Denver.
appreciation.
So
Tim
that's gonna be interesting.
Tim writes in, "This team will never lose again." So I love the
I
Tim,
love the
go
optimism.
to Connecticut, go to Bally's, go put a bet on that right now for the season, then you'll be a millionaire. Um, but yeah, so listen, I think that riding the momentum of Louis to El Paso was the most important thing here. This team showed grit, this team showed determination. But most importantly, they showed consistency. One of my favorite coaches and one of my favorite leaders of all time is John Wooden, and he would always write and he would always say that like, anyone can win, but doing it over and over is the definition of class, it's the definition of championship. And that's what I want to see now from this team is to continue to ride the momentum. And listen, when we finally do lose at some point, sorry, Tim, we will. If we do it with our heads held high and we
Yeah.
just get outplayed and it's a close game and like the tactics on the day weren't there, that's fine. Like there's a difference between losing a game like let's say I don't know if we've had a game that I would really consider a quality loss. But we all know that there's a difference between a tie in Sacramento.
Memphis 901 felt like a loss.
Well, a lot of the ties have. Like, there's a difference in the Sacramento tie. Played a very good game. It was almost there. Like, we could still be proud it just sucked. And then there's a difference on the Detroit game or even the Phoenix game. It's like, where's the team going? So I think as long as they continue to build on this, they put trust in each other, they put trust in coach, I see the sky as the limit. I see us getting back higher and higher into the standings. And all I know right now is we're above Hartford again. The world has returned, order has been restored, and we can enjoy ourselves. So I was really excited. It's great that we got to celebrate the win at home. It was great that it was Pride Night. It was a lot of fun. Hot wieners, like everything went right on the night. So, you got anything else? You got table standings? What do you want
No,
to
yeah,
wrap with?
let's move on to the table standings here. So RFC are now in ninth place on the official USL Championship board with a 3-9-4 record, or in the FOTMOB I Want to Believe table, they're an 8th. I think that's because they probably have in the background a different tiebreaker coded in. That's not the official one. So realistically ninth, but we are tied on 18 points with North Carolina FC. They just have one more win than we do. So I have here table standings slash rival watch kind of little segment. I don't know if we'll always do this, but now that we're getting to the second half of the season and potentially pushing into that playoff spot, looking around, there's a lot of teams that are close to us, right? So Hartford is playing at Sacramento Republic this weekend. So tough match for them. I feel like the best result they could ask for is a tie, but who knows? North Carolina is away to Charleston Battery, and the Riverhounds are away to Las Vegas Lakes. Obviously, it's kind of one of those things where it's in our hands to do the best that we can. But all three of those matchups are pretty tough, I think, and they're all away. So we very well could hold on to this place, even though we do not have a game this weekend, while all three of our kind of like rivals there are, out getting beat up somewhere else.
I mean, I don't usually pay attention to them. I'm glad that you've done the reconnaissance. At the end of the day, like, we will see what happens. If that
Yeah,
gives us natural progression up the food chain, I'll take any and every opportunity we can get. Speaking of food, did you hear in the interview where Coach was promising to
TV
reward?
donuts.
Yeah. So I saw them get tagged a few times today. They had the donut being inside their victory celebration
Saw
pose.
those donut
Yeah.
like little pool floaties or
Yep.
something they got
So
there.
apparently when they win, it's donut celebration. But I guess it's also for clean sheets. And so they had a couple of nil clean sheets, and Coach jokingly was like, they only got Duncan on those days, but on a win day they get the good stuff. So Rhode Island FC front office, we know you're listening. Please make sure that you get a Providence donut sponsorship or one of the other superior donuts. For those of you that are still in the chat, write in what your favorite donut shop. Let's start the donut wars of 2024. Listen, based on the allegiances in the state, some people will say other names like DVD. Some will say Need, some will say Alley's. Like, this
Me
causes.
too. I'm willing to go to random places to try donuts.
My favorite is, I won't start a fight because it's the same. It'll cause problems, but it's not what you would expect, and it's not Dunkin'.
Oh, I think I
Nate,
know what it is. Yeah, I mean,
right,
won't
it's in
divulge that.
PVD Donuts, so we know what team Nate's on. But listen, at the end of the day, this is what we live for. It was such a great time. Happy to
Donuts?
see the guy. Yeah, we live for donuts. Look at this body runs on donuts, not Dunkin'. Um, it was a great time. Really appreciate everyone being able to hang out today with us, listen in, and can't wait to do it again all over next week. We will do that Wednesday podcast. We have 2 interviews lined up. I don't know which order I will release them in. So we have an Amos Shapiro Thompson interview already done. That's ready to go. But we also have President David Parrott on the podcast tomorrow. So we'll probably be releasing one of those on Monday morning or maybe Tuesday morning, just depending. And then we'll get the other one released the following Monday. So you guys write in the chat which one you want to hear first, and then we'll go. We'll just let the fans decide which one gets released before the other one. But other than that, we can't wait to see you guys at the Bristol Parade. If you want, come by and say hi, give us high fives, hydrate me. I'm walking 6 miles in the sun, so keep me hydrated. And the next day on Friday, July 5th, we'll be back at Bern to take on the 11 on Independence Day. You think the club you think they did that intentionally?
Possibly. I don't know who decides this, but someone that's like they need to play. Well, it would be the league, right? The league is like,
I wonder if Indy 11 always makes sure they have a game on the 4th or on the 5th. That's a missed opportunity for them if they're not always doing it. Couple final chats here. Sneaky good donuts at Bikini Bakery, and then Matthew G. We want famous Amos. He wants cookies. That wasn't the test. It was donuts or which interview you wanted. You failed, Matthew. But that game, back to the details here. That game will be the day after Independence Day at 7:30 p.m. It's going to be on ESPN Plus. I've heard there may be fireworks. I've heard there might not be. Don't know what the story is with that, but you don't come out for the fireworks. Come out to support the team. They're on a hot streak
fireworks
now.
on the field.
Yeah, you'll see the magic on the field on the night. And hey, listen, like, we really appreciate you guys tuning in. We're gonna keep working on this stream. We apologize for any audio qualities, and we'll always do the better post production for the standard podcast release on all the major platforms there. So don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, donate, love us, buy merch, just whatever you want to do with your hearts, your minds, your wallets. We appreciate all of it at the end of the day. Big shout out one more time to Nate on the Anchors Up chain. Really appreciate that. It compliments us. Now, I promise we'll at least always try to remember to wear them on game day, but they will always be here in the frame so you can see them. appreciate you. And, yeah, anything else you got before we wrap?
No, I appreciate you guys. We really do enjoy all the support. It's always great to, meet new people who are like, "Oh, hey, I listen."
I know that guy wearing those pit vipers over there.
Alright, so let's wrap it up here, guys. Make sure to check out our friends over at the Blazing Musket for all your New England soccer and RIFC coverage at theblazingmusket.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Threads, and TikTok at RIFC Podcast, Instagram at Raising Anchor, and that website, Raising Anchor Podcast.
Anchors up, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Anchors up.